Well, we know why it's a pay-per-view because the main event did 620,000 pay-per-view buys the last time out, which is astronomical numbers considering the activity of the fire sticks in the particularly in the UK market. So people bought into it. And that's why we're seeing a lot of people. A lot of us didn't want to see it the first time. A lot of us, after we saw the state of Eubank, completely emaciated, making weight, said we didn't want to see it again. But money talks and bullshit runs the marathon, and these two are doing it again. So I suppose no better place to start now. I was back with Maddie here. Look, it's the rivalry has deep roots. The fathers, Eubank Senior and Nigel Bain, had a brutal two-fight rivalry back in the 90s. We've talked about that till the cows come home. These two are poor imitations of both their old lads, but have still managed to make an impact in terms of crossover appeal, and it's in somewhat terms of legacy, even though they haven't won a world title between the two of them, or a recognized world title if you're not counting the IBO titles that Eubank has won. The two of them again are selling out the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. As much as we complained about this fight the last time, we had the doping scandal, the weight scandal, every kind of fucking scandal you could imagine. Um, when these two went to the arena and you saw Eubank Senior step out of the limo with Junior, it did hit a lot of nostalgia points for me, and actually reluctantly for me, I got caught up in the fucking thing when I was watching it, and it actually turned out to, because Eubank was so weight drained and there was so much energy and high stakes in terms of the family pride, it actually turned out to be an entertaining contest for guys at this level. Now, I have to say and admit that I've never gone back and rewatched it again. It wasn't like a thriller in Manila, but it certainly did get me invested on the night. Matty, where do you see the rematch going? Who do you think has a better chance after the time has passed? Eubank has to make weight again. Ben maybe would see areas for improvement based on his first performance. Is there a chance of the reverse here?
I think it all depends on how well Eubank is able to make the weight at the end of the day. Bomack's in his corner, and I think the best he's ever looked was under
Our mate.
Bomack. And it's very interesting. Bomack is welcome back into the country, but that's for another show and another day. Um, but but yeah, I mean, if ultimately, and you look at the first fight. We all watched the sport long enough to know when boxers didn't make the weight well, and when they look like they're suffering a bit. And we know that Eubank looked like shit. And he still came away with the victory, showing incredible fortitude and throwing over 100 punches in the last round to seal the deal. But again, it comes down, if he makes the weight safely, it's a middleweight against a welterweight with an ego that's far bigger than his punch, and it should definitely go back in Eubank's favor again, as long as he makes the weight correctly. And I think this time probably by knockout.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, to be honest with you. If I was looking at it, I'd probably see, yeah, if the rehydration clause or whatever, I don't know. Like I'm not privy to that kind of information, and it's probably available for me to look into, but I don't know enough about it myself to properly making a judgment on it, on how it's going to impact Eubank. Although I do know he looked drained and dead the last time. If there's no rehydration clause this time, maybe you'd imagine he looks a little bit stronger and could possibly put the foot down. One thing of note for me, Justin, was just how rocked Eubank looked when he did get clipped. That wasn't something I expected. A lot of people have spoken about Conor Benn's power over the years. I mean, he has power at a certain level. He was knocking over men and taxi drivers for his first 10 fights on Sky. Then he developed a lot of power. Um, exactly where he got that power out of, I don't know, but he developed a lot of power when he was stopping the likes of Chris Algieri. Um, but again, he was up at 160. I didn't expect it to carry up. I don't know if it's a combination of Ben's raw power at 60 as he packed on the pounds and Eubank being emaciated, but he did seem to rock Chris Eubank Jr. early in the fight last time. Do you think if he jumps on him, that you do you think? Sorry, do you think that the weight range Eubank resulted in him having kind of diminished powers of recovery, or the power to absorb the shots from Ben? And is there a danger that if that happens again, that he gets knocked out by Ben?
I think it was 100% the fact that he was almost like a skeleton. Because, I mean, Ben couldn't hurt Pistol Pete Dobson. And so I don't think that it was
during
because,
a matinee.
yeah, I don't think it was because Ben has this great power moving up. I think it was the fact that Eubank was just dead. He was just dead. He luckily, I can't believe he got through that, actually, the whole 12 rounds, because I don't give a shit about this fight. I never have. I still don't. I still don't care about this fight. I don't see how people that 600,000 people paid for. I don't see how they sold out. I guess there's nothing else better to do in the UK than go watch that. I guess you just want something to do. I can think of 9,000 different things I would rather do than pay the money to go watch. I guess people just want to have a good time and get drunk and sing songs and just hang out because the fight, I could care less
Well,
about either
to
one of these
kind of to kind of present a very poor equivalent, it'd be like if Ray Leonard and Hagler had sons and they wanted
guys.
to
Oh
take
God,
up the mantle.
yeah,
Not saying that Eubank and Ben were in the same category as Leonard and Hagler, but certainly in terms of how those two fights captivated this side of the Atlantic. It was the only show in town. It was one of the biggest sporting events in boxing
but
history
it
for
but
the
it
UK.
does
So
but it does show though more than anything else when Fury fights AJ, which he will, how big that's going to be. If this is this big and they make so much money off of this, how big would that fight be? I just don't. I could see actually, getting back to the question, I could see Ben stopping Eubank, and people think I'm crazy, but like you said, he hurt him multiple times in that
definitely
first
hurt
fight.
them.
He
Definitely hurt them.
if he clips him, and Eubank is going to be a weaker version than he was in the first fight. He's not going to get any better than he was in the first fight. He has to keep sucking down this weight. He's not going to show up all of a sudden. He's just naturally at the weight now and he's going to look good. So Ben is automatically going to be ready for this weight. He's going to be in the prime at this weight. He's going to be fit for this. He's not going to have to suck all the weight down. He's going to be ready to go. So I could see if I had to bet money, I might put the money on Ben. I'm going to put money on the Ben knockout. I think Ben will knock out Eubank. I think he'll stop him
Interesting.
because I think Eubank's going to be worse than he was in the first fight. There's no way his motor is going to be able to be at the same level it was, and he's going to keep going another 12 rounds like he did when we know that he is just dead at this weight, that he's sucking
Yeah, he'll
everything.
be fine. This one's for Victor.
Yeah, I got it. Yes.
Well,
God.
that's really interesting that you say that because I thought that Ben, even though he didn't get the win, he actually in the immediate aftermath when you saw him like do his press run out in America with Ariel Helwani and he's sitting beside Shakur Stevenson and these guys, I think he had a kind of a weight lifted off his shoulders because I don't think he believed in himself at all throughout his entire career, and I think the fact that he put in a performance, a gallant performance against Eubank at middleweight, I think his stock actually went up a little bit, and it might have taken some of the pressure off him. Because he knows he can hurt Eubank now, and he might try and box a little bit. I think if he tries to box Eubank, that'll probably play into his hands. Des, I know me and you were going back and forward on the WhatsApp on this when we were watching it live. I think everybody was willing Eubank to win just for the way Ben had, popped 30, etc. We don't need to rehash all that old stuff. But how do you see the rematch playing out? And do you think that Eubank has a chance of doing this weight again? And I know there's a contrarian view to this as well, right? Because a lot of us in the boxing circles were saying we can't believe Eubank looked like a skeleton. This is horrible. And then there's the kind of the pro matchroom crowd who are offering the argument to say that Eubank has been making this weight pretty much for his last 5 or 6 fights, so it shouldn't be such a big deal now. But do you think it's going to play a factor in the second time out, or do you think it'll just be business as usual for you and your mate Bomac on the night?
Well, well, is this definitely at middleweight this fight? Because I've paid very little attention to it, and I'm not even up to speed with it. I've not watched any of the press conferences.
Good
I
question.
wasn't
And you
overly
know what?
impressed
That's
with
a
the
good
first
point.
fight.
One of the guys in the chat said as well. It hasn't the momentum for it this time around. The rematch is not as big as the original one. Like definitely not. It
No,
was
it's
it was
not.
the only
No,
show
it's
in
not.
town when the first fight happened. But it's kind of crept up on us very quickly this time. So I
Mm,
don't I don't I think it's at 160, but I can't be 100% sure.
okay.
Maybe some of the guys in the chat will enlighten us. But um, regardless, regardless if it's 157, 160, how do you see it playing out?
Well, he was at 168 on Tuesday. Gone, Eubank. I got told he come in at 168, and they're happy with his weight. They're doing an awful lot of work with a body bag. He's got 3 trainers in camp with him. Bomack's the head trainer, and they're really happy with it. That they think he's a much better version of Chris in this camp than he was in the last camp. That's the word that's coming out of camp.
So you're telling me Eubank's going to cut 8 pounds nice and easy?
Well, as I said to the guy that was feeding this all to me, I said it's the last 2 kilos that kill you. So being
Yeah.
8 pound over with with pretty much 2 weeks to go, it'd lose 4 pound, in 3 or 4 days doing it properly. But then
It
it's the last
depends
2
how
kilos that take
hydrated
it
he
all out of you.
is. It depends how hydrated he is sitting at that 168 right now.
And he's near to the bone at 160 anyway. So the last 2 kilos will be what takes his legs away. So it's going to be hard work for him, but I don't think he can look as bad as what he did first time. And I think that probably led to. I remember watching it, and you're quite right, Rob. We was talking while it was on, and if you remember, Rob, we didn't think much of the fight. We thought this was like 2 kids boxing for an area title. They wasn't turning their hands
It was a
over.
terrible fight.
They wasn't looking for traps. It was a case of just you hit me, I hit you, and the crowd bought into that, and that probably says a lot about. I don't mean to be disrespectful. That probably says a lot about the majority of the people that was watching this type of fight, because I always judge it by the common man in the street that talks about fights, and no one talks to me about. If I go down to the health club, no one talks to me about Crocker and Donovan. No one talks to me about Boots and Ortiz, but they're talking to me about this one. So it has, for whatever reason, attracted a lot of attention. That said, I've been told the tickets are not going well for this one. They're not going like they did for the first one. So people have, kept their money in their pocket, and tickets ain't gone like the first one. And I'm not quite sure if we've seen the same sort of viral traction or interest that we did in the first one that we have for this one. So
Definitely not. I
where
don't.
does it
It
go?
hasn't had
No.
it hasn't had the crossover appeal. It's a good actually segue to lead into. I'm going to come back to Maddie on this. The winner. Look, if Eubank wins this one, it seems as though he's never cared about legacy. Like he still hasn't. I don't believe he still fought for a version of a world title. Maybe he fought for one against George Groves when he got beaten, but I think that was in the semi-final of Super Six, wasn't it? So it wasn't even for a title. So
If he wins, there's only one fight that makes sense for him and makes
Canelo.
good money. Nope, Hamza Shiraz.
Shiraz, yeah, no, yeah, no, good shout. He's actually been lined up for the rematch with Berlanga. Maybe
Oh
Berlanga
Fuck
has
me, isn't that one of the stupidest
he don't
goddamn
go
things
nowhere
you've
near
ever heard?
Shiraz.
But
He don't
Berlanga
go
has
nowhere near
opened his
Shiraz.
mouth and he took his ass whooping and then has gone Glovegate route. Glovegate seems to be the route to getting your
Oh,
rematch. If you get your ass
fucking
beat,
eat
say that
my
the gloves
ass.
were loaded, so enough fucking idiots online will buy into it, and you get yourself a crack at the you get yourself another pop at it. Like I
What
don't
a
know. So yeah,
dick.
Shiraz versus Eubank. I don't know if Eubank could
Yeah,
take that fight. If I
that's more
I, I think
likely.
I think you might see Eubank versus Canelo and have Eubank have one more dance that he would, where it's a name and he would, get it, make a shit ton of money out of it fighting Canelo. I think I think Hamza Shearer will be at the stage where he'd be looking at stopping Eubank, especially after he's been drained so much to get down to this. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. In terms of Conor Benn, where does he go? Because if he puts in another close performance, his career is certainly not over. There's doors open to him. There talks that he's already looking at Mario Barrios, isn't it? Or one of those like.
Isn't
Um,
everybody?
Everybody's looking at Mario Barrios, man. Mario Barrios is the biggest target on his back, but somehow it's still the champion. Fucking all these years later, like so, he
I,
must be
I,
doing something
I
okay.
swear I've seen him I swear I've seen him box 3 times in person, which ties him for for Crawford for the most that I've seen any fighter, and I don't know how it happened. I've like never purposefully gone to see Mario
Hey,
Barrios.
just
That's
admit
really
you're a
weird.
big fan of Mario Barros.
I enjoy watching the fight, dude. That Abel Ramos fight was fantastic. That
Super
was one of the
Mario.
best
Rob,
fights I've seen live. But honestly, like Ryan Garcia is supposed to fight Barrios. The winner of that fight, I guess, is interesting. I don't think he wins either of those. I think that Ben's level is somewhere like he could probably I think of the most competitive fight for Ben, honestly, at the weight he belongs at, which is at 147, or at least not even maybe competitive, just to see where he really sits at the weight he belongs, would be the winner of Esserman and Catterall. That's one guy's.
Yeah, good sure. I actually saw
Rob,
one of their. Sorry, Des. Go ahead, dude.
no, I'm just going to come in at that. I think we've got to put this type of fight in its own little microcosm. This isn't it's boxing, but not boxing as we know it. It's boxing, but it's not the mainstream version of boxing. It's like it's not quite pantomime. It's not misfits, but it's somewhere between pro boxing that we know and love and misfits boxing. This sits somewhere in the middle of it. And I think, from what I was told, on the first fight, it was a 10 million to Eubank, 8 million to Connor. That was the purses.
And
And
five
this
hundred
one,
thousand
the
dollars
re
to Connor for
Outrageous.
the 8.
Outrageous.
right, and it's outrageous. And the rematch was always pending at the contracts. That was always going to happen. And the loser of the first one gets 4, and the winner gets 8, or something like that. So when these two fights have been completed, and these two lads sit down, I really don't think Conor Benn's ever going to get back in with a proper fighter that can turn him over for $1.5 million or $2.5 million. I don't think Eubank's the same. Eubank's never shown any type of inclination to fight for legacy. So I think you could really see this now that Eubanks had a long career. He's been boxing, he's been boxing since Mick Hennessy had an ITV deal or a Channel 4 deal, whatever it was. And Conor Benn's had a lot going on in his personal life. I think Eubanks been weight drained, and in the first Conor Benn fight, I didn't quite like his legs. I didn't quite like his body language. He looked to me like a fight that's on his way to being a busted flush or shot. So I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this one, they'll do a bit of marketing, they'll milk it a bit more, they'll do a little bit of a tour. But I think this might be the last you see of them, because I just don't think the money they've had, I don't think they get anywhere close to that in a proper fight against a proper fighter. They've come around at the same time, and they've been very, very good for each other. And it's a very unique situation, this.
I agree with you. I think certainly it could be the end of Eubank. Potentially one last fight. I think if, like I said, if Canelo would want somebody that he could feast on for his last fight, and I think we're very close to seeing Canelo's last fight. I know Eubank was touted
Mm.
as a potential opponent for him when he was under the tutelage of Roy Jones. I agree with you. I think he looked very close to being shot. I thought he was actually shot since maybe the Smith fight. Um, Not that he, when I say it's shot, I'm not saying that Eubank was ever, well, we never really know how good he could have been. I think he fell
No, I know what
short
you mean. I
every
know what
time
you mean.
he
I know what
stepped
you
up,
mean.
and he was content, he was content just
Yeah.
keeping his career going. And we saw him lose to Groves, we saw him lose to Saunders, we
It's
saw him
so
lose.
unique. This situation
Yeah.
is so unique. It really is different.
And these two basically are earning more than any other fighters in the sport because of who their dads were. And look, we can't control that. That it is what it is. We wouldn't be watching these two at all, let alone on a pay per view, if their second names weren't Eubank and Ben. So we know that. Like, but I actually think Eddie's invested too much into Conor Ben to just let him cash out with this Eubank fight. I think he has high hopes for Ben, and they could market Ben. Conor Ben is a marketable fighter if he has a belt around his waist, which is interesting enough because, like we said, it hasn't caught fire here in terms of, kind of viral interest in it. But one of the quick vox pops that I saw on Twitter or TikTok or one of those where they were doing word association game with Conor Ben, and they were saying to him, Devin Haney, and he's like pussy, like Ryan Garcia, big pussy. Shakur Stevenson, he's like Shakur Twitterson. Jerome Booth Ennis, he's like hell of a fighter. So I think we know what direction Conor Ben is going to be going. I think it's going to be, as Mickey said to Rocky, hand picked. And hopefully we get some kind of a Rocky story. I'm going to go final predictions on this one. Days, which way do you see this one going?
Oh God, they're not going to do it a third time, are they? They wouldn't do that to us, would they? If they do it, if they're going
I
to, if they've
hope
got it
not, man.
written
It's been
into a
hard
third
enough trying to
time,
cover it fucking twice,
yeah,
let alone a third
yeah.
time. Like.
So if the fix ain't in, if there's no swindle, I think the Eubank wins.
Eubank for and Justin, you were gonna go Ben KO.
Yeah, Ben knockout for me. But I like to think though that they're giving their dad some of this damn money since they made it for him. hope they're giving him a
Oh,
piece.
I bet you they're getting a drink out of it, both
They
of them.
got
Well,
they got to be getting something.
Eubank Senior is going to be getting something out of it anyway. He's probably getting appearance money and everything, isn't he? That was the rumor the last time, wasn't it? That he was always going to show he was just negotiating more appearance money for himself, like before he turned up there at ringside. Maddie, what's the betting on this? Are you doing a bet next week on next weekend's action? And if so, what are you going with? What's your
For
parlay?
some reason, I think I have. I think I might have put Eubank just to win in a parlay, but maybe not. It's kind of a long shotter. But I know that that Eubank is a bit of a favorite. I think Ben is paying like 3-2. I'll confirm that here in just a second. But I'm again, if he makes the weight, fine. I'm absolutely going with Eubank to win to win this contest. But if he doesn't, then it's Ben. I think you're going to have to take a look at the weigh-in to really feel comfortable about it. But yeah, Ben's pay is paying all what that's 4-3 would be what he's at about 4-3 is what Ben's at. Eubank is minus 175. I don't know. You have to bet 1750 to win 10. I tell you, it's all about the weight though. I feel all right about Eubank as the victor in this fight. But if he looks like trash on the scales, I reserve the right to say, yeah, there you go. But my lean right now definitely is going to be Eubank, possibly by stoppage this time.
You don't see any
Better
value
corner.
you don't see any value in the Ben knockout, Matty. You're normally a hopeless romantic when it comes to this kind of thing and a dreamer, and
I
you see the value in this. You see what about a Ben early stoppage? Is that a possibility?
I saw the better value on the Ben stoppage when I knew he was on fucking drugs. Um, so right now, let's see here. Ben, that's interesting. So Ben by decision is paying about 9-2, and he's just shy really of 3-1 for the KO. So that's interesting. That's interesting. To the fight, let's see here. The fight to not go the distance. They're leaning just slightly in the fight not going the distance, minus 110 versus minus 125. I mean, that's way up in the air. The draw 16-1. And so the over under is going to be at 10.5. You can get a little bit better than even money taking the under. But yeah, that's what that's looking at. I think there's if I was to go back and replay this bet, thinking about how the weight plays, and then if he makes it well, I think the size plays. I probably would have just taken the fight not to go the distance in my bet.